So a common theme in a lot of the videos, the ones that we've been making and the ones that are already on your channel, is that guys start too late. They're already having problems and they're like, how do I fix this?
Yeah.
And the problem is really that they didn't start earlier to fix the problem.
Yeah, the broken vase problem.
Yeah, exactly. So what should guys do early on to make sure that they don't run into a lot of these stupid issues? And this can be either if they're already in a relationship or if they're single. Because I think there's going to be single guys watching this video who want to know how to not mess things up.
Right. Okay, so this is a little bit challenging, and the reason it's challenging is because the way a lot of the dating works these days is very different than it was, even 5 years ago. One of the issues that guys have today is that because they're meeting girls on the internet, the girls that meet them tend to have a very high degree of interest in them initially. And because the girls have a very high degree of interest in them initially, once the girl shows up for the date, the guy has to do less than he used to get the girl into bed. And so this gives the guy a incorrect sense of the amount of effort needed to make the girl happy, because he feels he already got her, right? First thing. The second thing is that because it's relatively low effort to get a new girl. Now, yeah, I know you have to spend a lot of time on the apps to get a girl, but what I mean is that once is that a lot of the steps that you have to do are relatively simple steps. Maybe that's a better way to say it. It's a simple step to be on an app, as opposed to having to go out, when you used to have far fewer opportunities. That's a better way to say it. You used to have far fewer opportunities because it was required that you happened to be or engineered yourself to be in the same space at the same time as a girl. And the only girls you had access to were girls that you could engineer that with. Whereas now you can find girls and location is not really a factor. Location and timing are not really a factor, let's say. So guys are meeting girls that like them a lot more from the beginning. Because, if the girl didn't like it from the beginning as much, they wouldn't have swiped, they wouldn't have shown up for a date, whatever. And so they don't understand that the amount of work or effort that's required, that used to be absolutely required from the very beginning. You had to put your best foot forward, and you needed to take the girl out. You needed to, and the other thing is that now, once again with social media, girls think they have an idea of what your lifestyle is like. Okay, so I'll give a great example of our friend who was with a girl, or he's been with a couple of girls, and they are shocked at how little or how stingy he is with them. Because on his social media, they see him traveling all over the world, they see him driving Lamborghinis, they see him buying Rolexes, and doing Muay Thai training in different countries. And then when they actually spend time with him, and they see him taking them for street food. Oh, and don't forget, lots of fine dining, smoking cigars. So when they meet him and he's taking them for street food, they're very confused about this. So when they see what he's presenting on social media, they're very interested in him and they're very excited. And they think that's what they're going to get treated to. And then when they show up and they find out that that's not really what's on offer, they're really disappointed. In the past, there wasn't this ability to create an image on social media that would attract women. So now of course I'm not saying that didn't happen, of course it did. There's a classic episode in Sex and the City of this guy telling Samantha, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do this, we're gonna do all these things in the future and blah, blah, blah. And so guys maybe would run that sort of game of, we will do this stuff. But it definitely required more effort in time, because every time you went on a date with a girl, you had to present her with an experience that you could afford, basically, right? Whereas now you can go on one experience and take a bunch of pictures, and those live forever on Instagram. And so it doesn't have to be a regular part of your life, because when someone looks at your grid, they just see, these snapshots. Or you can you can take one girl on a date and you can use those pictures on your grid. And so rather than every time you go on it, and so the girl who sees that thinks she's going to get that when she goes on a date with you, but then you don't have to do that with her. Whereas when you are with when it wasn't that, the girl had to have the actual experience, because if she didn't have the actual experience, she didn't have any way to know that that's what your lifestyle was like. And so this shift from the actual experience the girl has with you to the image that you're having. So for example, you could have, in the example of my friend, you could have this really great Instagram grid showing all these things, and then you could claim to the girl, well, I can't really, I don't have time for dinner today, I'm really busy with work, but we could meet after, you can come over, and you can come over, let's just say. So the guy and the girl is thinking, oh, that's fine, he has this lifestyle, so if I just go over now, that's a good way for me to get him, and then later on I'll get all this stuff. Smoke and mirrors. Or, another example, guys might have a really nice apartment, and so, the girl might assume that, if she has a really nice apartment and an expensive apartment, we know someone who's going to do this, they're going to have the expensive apartment, that, they assume that that means that his whole other lifestyle is also, really high quality. And maybe he doesn't ever take them out on dates. All he has is a nice apartment. So because of it changed in terms of what it takes to get women, guys don't understand the effort that's required. And they don't have the practice and the experience. You had that story about the girl that went over to the guy's place, and he was just like, what was the story where she went over to his place and he was like, seemed to expect that they would have sex, but then...
Oh, yeah. So they had met on a dating app, and he invited her directly to his place, and she was reasonably attracted to him, so she went over. And then she walked in, and then he told her to sit on the bed, and there were no chairs or anything, and she said, well, I feel kind of uncomfortable, so I'm just going to stand. And then the guy got all upset and angry, and he's like, well, why'd you even come over here? And, and then, of course, he kind of like kicked her out after that.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the story.
Right. So that's like an example where, he basically felt that he shouldn't have to do anything. Whereas there was never this idea in the past that you wouldn't have to do anything. There was always the idea that you had to do something. And now that just isn't the case. And so I think, guys don't have the practice. They don't understand or know how to interact with women in a way that is conducive to her having her needs met a lot of the times. And they don't get that practice from the dating process the way that they used to. I don't know if that answered the question. Yeah,
so basically what you're saying is that the process of courtship, like traditional courtship, where you would have to, let's say you meet a girl somewhere and you go from being strangers to having a sexual relationship, that process is really the key to preventing future problems and to developing the skills that you would need to be attractive to women long term.
Yeah, exactly. And so those skills are things that guys don't end up learning to the same degree that they used to, and they don't get the same experience. They don't get the feedback, because that was an important feedback element. Was you would take her out on a date and then she wouldn't want to go on a date with you again. Not even talking about she didn't have sex with you. She wouldn't even go on another date with you. So that tells you, okay, maybe I need to do something different, especially if you thought it was a great date. You think, wow, I thought that was a great date, and it wasn't. And so, and I think that was another aspect where, because a lot of this stuff was public, it happened in the public sphere, there was more exchange between guys discussing how to do things. Nowadays, people are, doing a lot of this stuff over text. I have no idea what other guys are texting girls. No clue. Whereas in the past, you would be there when guys were talking to girls. So if you knew a guy who was good with women, you would see how he interacted with women, and you would hear how he interacted with women. And nowadays you have no idea. Now, yeah, I know people sometimes post stuff, but you never really know if that stuff is real or if they're just, just doing it for trolling purposes or to get likes and views on social media, whereas, you couldn't fake it in the past. So, yeah, so that is a big element. And so what are some of these elements in courtship? Well, some of these elements, good conversation, people making the conversation fun and engaging, good topic selection, being able to get the other person, get the girl to open up and talk more, listening, responding to what she's saying in ways that make her feel that what she's saying is really interesting to you, creating sexual tension, communicating to her what you want in the future from a relationship or from a relationship with her. At that time, because you really knew the person, you could start to really think about what how that person might fit into your life or activities you might do with them in the future. Whereas, now I think there isn't as much incentive to think about that because you're at least me, I think you're this way too. You think, well, I don't even really know this chick. Like if you don't really, how do you know how much time you want to spend with them? I mean, yeah, you know that you'd like to see them naked, but you don't really know how much you would enjoy interacting with them until you really meet them. And so when it all happens online, now women like this online thing because then they can only interact with the guys that they want to, and so they think that's better. But they're not thinking about it from the other side, which is the fact that now they're meeting a bunch of guys who have little to no interest in them beyond their sexuality. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't generate that, but a lot of times the way the guys think now is, well, let me just have sex with the girl, and maybe if it's good, then maybe I'll want to keep seeing her. Whereas in the past, guys might have thought that way, but it wasn't really an option. The number of guys who could get one-night stands, and when I say one-night stands, I don't mean first date sex. I'm talking about they go out to a club or a bar and they meet a girl and have sex with her the same night. Very few guys could do that, and certainly very few guys could do that with any regularity. And so there was always the process of getting to know the girl's personality and knowing that maybe you'd have to take the girl out on several dates. And so you'd think, well, would you take a beautiful girl who has an insufferable personality on multiple dates? Generally, you wouldn't. Whereas now, you don't need to deal with the personality because the girl already likes you enough to come and meet you, and maybe enough to come straight to your house. So, a lot of those skills, because here's the thing is that if you had to take the girl out on a date anyway, and you had to pay anyway, then it's like, okay, well, you would want it to be enjoyable for yourself too. Whereas now there's none of that aspect of being creative around how you arrange the time with the girl so that you can enjoy the time with her even if you don't get any action. So, I think a lot of it is just about laziness, laziness leading to the atrophy or the lack of development in all of these social skills that people used to have. And the dynamic of being able to have a girl come straight over without needing to know her or get to know her personality much.
Right. So you think that basically all men would benefit from, spending more time, like front loading more time to go on dates with girls before they're having sex with them. And even if that's from a dating app, for example.
So, I wouldn't necessarily say that because I actually think that benefits women more than it benefits guys. Because for many guys, I know there are guys who want to have a stable relationship. I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's less important to people now because of the ease of meeting new people. I feel like guys are not as interested, because I think in the past, because it was such a process, and that process took a lot more time, because there was a process, guys vetted more carefully. I think now, because there's the lack of such a process, guys don't vet as much. And so you could argue that this situation benefits guys a lot. I would say that really it's the girls that, I would say that it's the girls that are really not benefiting much from this situation. Well, that's a good question. I mean, how much do you think young guys are interested in having a stable relationship? Do you think they are?
I would say that probably guys who aren't having any sex are very interested in like having a stable relationship.
Right, but I mean, here's the thing: is that generally speaking, wouldn't you agree that like, okay, so why would you say these guys aren't? Why don't they have sex or stable relationship?
You mean the guys who aren't having it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of it is that there's no roadmap for them really.
Yeah.
So before there was like there were some roadmaps that you could take to meeting and dating girls.
Right, or you would spend time with, or
right.
Because like even like I guess you would spend time around guys who were interacting with women, and you get to see at least somewhat. I mean, I certainly knew guys that were good with women, and I tried to ask them questions and watch what they were doing.
Right, and I think now those types of guys who before they would like interact with people who could get girls, and now they just end up in online echo chambers, kind of, where they're not really exposed to any path forward. So I think that's part of it.
Right.
But that's one category of guy, and then I think the other guys who are the ones who are, doing well on dating apps for any number of reasons. Either they're, just really high value, like really good looking, whatever, or they're just really good at running dating app game. Those guys, I think it's true. They because they have so many options, they don't really feel the need to, lock down one girl.
Right.
Because they can just keep churning through girls.
Yeah, I mean, and the stats do bear this out, right? The number of the increase in sexlessness. I mean, I think there's very much much more of a distribution of, the guys who are getting sex are getting a lot of it, and the guys who aren't getting much are getting even less than they used to. But here's the thing: is that like, women don't really care about this problem. They don't think it's a problem because now they're just getting access to the guys they want to get access to. Now, maybe they're not getting something from those guys long term, but, this is a situation where the alternative from their perspective is to spend time with guys that they're not as interested in.
Yeah, I mean, like...
So it's like...
For both of the genders, it's like... It's kind of like a very efficient market for both of them, sort of, at this point, even though it's not really that great when you like zoom out.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, but then going back to my question to you earlier, one of the things I was asking was, should guys spend more time learning the courtship process? And the idea there is that learning that process helps them longer term.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a marshmallow test type of thing. And do you think that's worth guys spending more time on?
Okay, so...
Even if they can have very easy sex.
I mean, of course I think it is, but I don't really think the incentives are there for them to actually do it. Right? I mean, I think, this is one of the key things about, before there was, online dating, was that you needed to be out to meet girls anyway. And so the process was the same. The only difference was how attractive the girls were that you interacted with. So, now the process is not, I mean, you could say it's the same, the process with it, but now the algorithm decides how attractive the girls are that you get to interact with, right? You don't get to decide yourself. So it's not like you think, well, if I improve my social skills, then I'm going to be able to interact with more attractive women. The algorithm decides, right? So, in the past, I think there was more of an incentive because you had more control. Yeah, you had more control over the outcomes, whereas now the outcomes are out of your hands in a lot of ways. Certainly there are people on the internet that are teaching various like hacks to get around, the algorithm and that sort of thing. But this is not the skill set that helps you with relationships. How to hack the algorithm is not,
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to pass your test by cheating instead of like just studying.
Right. But I mean, the thing is that the algorithm doesn't really reward the studying aspect either. So, I mean, this is for me. It's a real problem. I mean, it's hard for me to the incentives are bad for everyone involved, and I don't really see a way for those incentives to improve as long as the current paradigm of dating exists. Like,
well, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
If a guy, let's say like a relatively young guy, if he wants to improve himself with the goal of dating just one girl or dating a lot of girls, what should he do?
Yeah, I mean, okay. Obviously, if you spend time trying to meet girls in the real world, you will have to improve your social skills. So that's an obvious avenue for improving.
And just to be clear, you think that social skills, this might sound obvious, but developing social skills is really important for your like long-term success in relationships. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because I think that there's a couple of aspects, right? So even if you look at it from the female side of things, there's a skill in women communicating to a guy that they're not sexually interested or that they're sexually unavailable without being rude, right? And in the same way, there's a skill to showing sexual interest in a woman without her feeling pressured, right? The idea behind seduction is not that the person feels pressured. The idea is that you create an environment where the person feels drawn to you, right? And so that skill is something that was required to be cultivated in the past, that is not required anymore. I mean, in the previous video, we were talking about manipulation and the importance of manipulation, right? And actually, really what courtship was about manipulation, in the sense of, as the guy, you meet a girl who you think is really attractive and you'd love to get her into bed. And she's not so sure about you because she doesn't know anything about you other than what you look like. And, maybe the way you look like is not objectionable, but it's not let me jump into bed with this guy immediately. And so you are manipulating her into going on a date with you, for example, into giving you her phone number, right? Even the very beginning steps required some level of social skill, so that, let's say she's not particularly interested in you and she would brush you off. So, if you matched her on Tinder, she would just swipe left. Yeah, this way. She'd swipe left and she'd never communicate with you. Now what happens is you're having an interaction with her, and now it's like, well, can you make it so that she's interested enough to give you her phone number? Can you generate enough interest so that she's willing to meet you for a date? So there's these intermediate steps. There's that concept of yes, no, and maybe girls, right? So a yes girl is a girl who's definitely down and she's really into you. A no girl is a girl who she's immediately writes you off, and a maybe girl, which means she's not sure. Well, what's happening with the modern world, and so really the area of play was the maybe girls, because generally the maybe girls were the girls that were not out of your league, but or at least from from the girl's perspective, she's not out of your league entirely, but you're not really her ideal. And for girls also, generally speaking, they spend a lot of time interacting with guys that for them were a maybe, because they didn't have unlimited access to guys that they were yes for. But now they have unlimited access to guys that are yeses. And so all the maybe guys, they just eliminate those guys. And so the skill was in the maybe, was in, the girl doesn't eliminate you, so how do you make it so that she's somewhat interested? How do you generate more and more interest over time? And, at that time, there wasn't the same ability to sort of, because of the fact that in-person interaction takes time and energy, automatically the pool is smaller. And so because this pool is smaller, people are going to be sifting through it more carefully. Whereas now, there's no incentive for people to sift through it, for women to sift through it. So, yeah, I mean, it's really a bad situation all around, honestly. It's just really bad. And I don't really know that there's a solution. But anyway, so what I would say is that, spending time out in the real world, interacting with people in the real world, that has so many benefits. So many benefits.
Yeah, even outside of just dating.
Right. Even outside of just dating. So, that's something, once again, that, now you see many, it's interesting because you get some people, some women saying, oh, I'm so happy that, I don't have to deal with guys approaching me anymore. And then you have the other women going, well, this is really terrible that guys don't approach anymore, And I think, it's kind of a mess, really. It really is a mess. I mean, I think it's not great for society the way that things are now. Yeah, I mean, it's not good. It's not good. And I don't know that there's much to be done about it because of the way the incentives are. But yeah, getting out and interacting with people in real life. You think about the fact that in the past, guys who were extroverted, they just wouldn't be able to meet anyone. And these days, that's not true anymore. Even if it's DMing girls on Instagram.
You mean guys that were introverted?
Yeah, guys that were
extroverted.
Oh, sorry, guys that were introverted. They understood that they would have to learn, essentially, or exercise their extroversion muscle. So, it sort of made people richer as people because they needed to be out there in the world to meet.
Yeah, and they had to be aware of their weaknesses.
Right.
And how to develop them.
And I would even say, like, in the example of, like, even if you were introverted and you didn't actually go and approach women, you would still meet people through your social network, friends of friends, through, school, work, whatever, various, social things. And so even in this case, even if you weren't actively going out there trying to meet women, you knew that those were your opportunities, and so you knew that you needed to develop those skills. Whereas now, if you're an introverted hot guy, that with no personality, fine. Yeah, I mean it's horrible. It really is. And I really think that despite the fact that women are getting kind of exactly what they want in the short term, I think it's really awful for them. And in a way, it's it's kind of bad to say this, but it's kind of their fault. And it's their fault because women are the ones who, are the primary selectors, right? So they've chosen this, essentially, not realizing the consequences for themselves by choosing this.